AI needs 50 gigawatts of new power. The bottleneck isn't reactors. Isn't gas turbines. It's a 200-ton steel box. Lead time to buy one, 128 weeks. 2.5 years. Up from 50 weeks before 2022. The United States makes 1 in 5 of what it consumes. 80% imported. The grid runs on rented capacity. Here's the part that doesn't add up. Half of all U.S. data center builds are already delayed or cancelled. Not because the chips slipped. Because the transformers haven't shown up. The thing we're talking about is called a large power transformer, or LPT. They sit at every substation between a generator and the high-voltage grid. Some weigh more than 400 tons. They run at voltages up to 800,000 volts and have to dissipate heat continuously, 24/7, for 40 years. You don't buy them off a shelf. Each unit is custom-engineered for a specific substation, voltage class, cooling type, BIL rating, footprint. The core is wound from a special grain-oriented steel that almost nobody makes. The windings are pure copper. Every transformer ends with a 30-page test report before it leaves the factory. Here's what's happened to the weight. Before 2022, the average lead time for a large power transformer in North America was around 50 weeks. Today, according to Wood Mackenzie's mid-2025 industry survey, the average is 128 weeks. Generator step-up units, the big ones at power plants, are running 144 weeks. 2.5 to nearly 3 years. Some custom orders are quoting beyond 5. Pricing tracks the lead times. LPT prices have risen 70 to 100% since 2020, and another 8 to 9% layered in from the 50% steel and aluminum tariff that took effect in August 2025. The supply deficit in the US in 2025 was about 30%. There is no near-term substitute. This is where it gets uncomfortable. The United States produces only about 20% of the LPTs it consumes. 80% are imported, with Mexico the single largest source thanks to Prolec GE, plus Korean and Japanese production for the high-voltage units. Why? It's structural, not the result of any single fire or single supplier. The US never had a domestic transformer industry at the scale of Korean or German players. The Department of Energy's 2024 Resilience Report formally classified large power transformers as a critical infrastructure vulnerability. Today, almost every major LPT fab on U.S. soil is owned by a foreign parent. HD Hyundai's Alabama plant. Hyosung HICO in Memphis. Siemens Energy in Charlotte. Hitachi Energy in Jefferson City. The biggest U.S.-owned LPT producer, Virginia Transformer, is private and a fraction of the imports. The grid runs on rented capacity. Now layer the AI buildout on top. U.S. data centers are projected to need 90 gigawatts of additional load through the end of the decade. The interconnection queue managed by FERC and grid operators currently holds 2,300 gigawatts of generation and storage projects waiting in line. In ERCOT, the average wait for a new project is now 4.5 years. In CAISO it is over 9. For 2026 specifically, hyperscalers have committed 12 to 16 gigawatts of new data center capacity. The actual transformer-supplied capacity available is closer to 5 gigawatts. A 7 gigawatt shortfall, and the consequence is already visible. As of April 2026, roughly half of U.S. data center builds are delayed or cancelled. So who actually makes this stuff? Globally, the top of the market is dominated by 3 names. Hitachi Energy, the part of Hitachi that absorbed ABB's transmission and distribution business in 2020, is the largest. Hitachi Energy's global order backlog is now roughly $58 billion, up 26% year-over-year, with revenue of about $20 billion in fiscal 2025. Siemens Energy, with a grid technologies backlog inside a total company backlog of about $149 billion and a book-to-bill ratio of 1.36. Both are publicly listed in Europe. The third, and the most actionable for U.S. investors, is GE Vernova, ticker GEV. In October 2025, GE Vernova bought out the remaining stake in Prolec GE, a 30-year Mexican joint venture, for $5.3 billion. Prolec is now the cornerstone of GE Vernova's electrification segment. The most aggressive American capacity move is also coming from a foreign player. In September 2025, Hitachi Energy announced more than $1 billion of U.S. investment, headlined by a $457 million new factory in Virginia, slated to be the largest LPT facility on U.S. soil when it opens in 2028. Add another $250 million in expansions to existing sites, plus $270 million in Montreal. GE Vernova answered with a $140 million facility in North Carolina that doubles its medium-voltage transformer output. HD Hyundai is doubling its Alabama plant from 100 to 150 units a year. Hyosung's HICO plant in Memphis is going to 200-plus units annually after a $157 million expansion. Capacity is coming. None of it lands in time for the 2026 cycle. The other constraint nobody talks about is the steel itself. Every transformer core is built from grain-oriented electrical steel, GOES, a specialty silicon steel made by exactly one U.S. producer, Cleveland-Cliffs, ticker CLF. Cliffs runs Butler Works in Pennsylvania and is currently spending $195 million on capacity expansion, plus 30 to 40% more tonnage out of Weirton, West Virginia. Outside the U.S., Nippon Steel is expanding its Hirohata plant by 40%, POSCO is adding 30% of premium-grade output. The U.S. imports about 85% of its GOES from Korea, Japan, and Germany. GOES prices have roughly doubled since 2020. Every $100 move in GOES per ton flows through to about $3,000 of transformer cost. Below the global majors, a quieter group of US and Canadian names is benefiting directly. HUBB, ticker HUBB, ended fiscal 2025 with $5.8 billion in revenue and a record $2.2 billion backlog, up 14%. Eaton, ticker ETN, hit $27 billion total with America's electrical bookings up 31% year-over-year. POWL Industries, ticker POWL, the substation packager, booked $1.1 billion in fiscal 2025 revenue and a record $1.6 billion backlog. And the smallest, purest demand signal in the group, Hammond Power Solutions, listed on Toronto as HPS-A, Hammond does dry-type transformers for data centers and EV charging. Fiscal 2025 revenue, $898 million Canadian, plus 14%. Backlog, up 22% year-over-year. The full 10-company landscape on one screen. What jumps out? GE Vernova at $163 billion in total backlog, after Q1 2026 reporting. Hitachi Energy alone at $58 billion. Siemens Energy at $149 billion at the parent. 3 companies sitting on more than $350 billion of forward orders, most of it grid equipment. But notice the bottom of the table. Hammond Power, the smallest name with under $1 billion in revenue, is the cleanest pure-play exposure to the data center transformer surge. Cleveland-Cliffs sits at the top of the input chain. Every grain of GOES that goes into a U.S. transformer is theirs unless imported. What happens next? Most likely path, lead times begin to plateau in late 2026 as Hitachi Energy's Charlotte and Virginia capacity comes online and Prolec ramps. Backlog probably peaks Q2 to Q3 2026. Probability that LPT lead times return below 100 weeks by end of 2027, in my view, around 25%. The structural shortage outlasts the AI cycle. Watch 3 signals. GE Vernova electrification segment book-to-bill, reported quarterly. Above 1.3, demand still outpacing capacity. Below 1.0, peak past. Hitachi Energy backlog and lead time disclosures. Backlog drops below $50 billion or lead times compress below 24 months, the cycle is rolling over. Wood Mackenzie Annual U.S. Supply Deficit Survey. Current reading, 30%. Below 15%, capacity is winning. Plus, Chinese transformer import volumes, already at 8,000 units in 2025, up from under 1,500 in 2022. Above 10,000 units, Chinese supply becomes a competitive threat at distribution level. Catalysts up, Trump's $1.9 billion SPA-RK transmission program deployed through 2026. Every hyperscaler data center announcement is, in effect, a new transformer order. Catalysts down, the 50% steel and aluminum tariff staying in place hurts domestic margins. AI Capex bubble correction. Upstream, GOES, copper, transformer oil. Downstream, every hyperscaler, every utility, every reshoring plant. They sit downstream of these 10 companies. The bottleneck on the AI build-out isn't the chip. It's the box. 2.5 years to make one. Half the data centers waiting. I'm Big Z, follow me, see you in the next deep dive.